Ladies and gentlemen,
Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hearing News. Kia ora Chewie. How are you, sir?
Kia ora, Pat. I am also here.
We are here. We are here, and we're bears. Get over it. Are we bears? I don't know if we are bears. I was looking for a word that rhymed there for a second, and that's what I went with. All going well? All happening well? Good day today? What is today? Wednesday. Wednesday?
It is Wednesday, my dude.
Oh. Chewie pushed the wrong button. You watch this, whānau. It's like Peter Pan. You rub your hands together and clap to bring the fairy back to life. You watch. Keep clapping, and the fairy will come back to life. See? Brings the fairy back to life.
That is just an example of what my day has been like.
Yeah.
Like, it hasn't been a fun day, Pat. It's been long. It's been tedious. People out there, chat, listeners, talk to your parents. Make sure that they can still read. That would be great.
All right. So tonight on the show, we're going to have a look at Winston Peters and New Zealand First have a bit of a history of attacking Ricardo Menendez March. And it seems to be sort of surrounding his birthplace. It's really bizarre that Winston would stand up in a situation, in a place where you are allowed to speak Māori. When you get up and share in the chamber, you can speak just Māori. That's the rules, right, of the chamber. But if you say the word Aotearoa, you're going to get some keeper of the crypt standing up saying, why don't you call it New Zealand? It's like, well, he did. That's the Māori word for New Zealand. You're allowed to speak Māori. So there's something more to it than this, more to it.
Maybe, like if Winston's confused about that, like men of his age can get confused quite easy. 79. Maybe a foreign minister should pull out his passport and see what's written on it.
I think he's just calling himself a minister now because he doesn't like the word foreign. I think we've figured that out, haven't we? So he's just the minister. Hey team, just to let you and remind you that the merch store is up and running again now. Is that the merch store? No, that's the Patreon. We'll do that first, shall we? Patreon is up and running now, and thank you so much for the people who have signed up and joined up. At the start of this year, we aimed for 100 new patrons within 2 months. 2 months is going to be about 5 weeks away. We're more than halfway there. If you enjoy what we do, if you want to support what we do, if you want to be a part of what we do, one of the ways we're able to plan 6 months out from now is because of what happens in the Patreon site and our patrons. So thank you for being a part of it. Patreon.com/Big Hearing News. What I was also going to say is the merch store is up and running. So all our gears are there. Anyone who buys any hoodies or tees, and the hoodies will be going up before the end of the week. Hoodies or tees in February will also get included some of the stickers that match the hoodie or the tee you have just bought. There they are. And then you can put them on your laptop and look cool because that's what all the kids do. They don't want to be a part of the corporate world, so they cover up their Apple symbols and they put symbols for all the other kinds of stores and stuff that they love instead. So, Chewie, tonight, really a story that I thought would be much bigger. Actually, I think I've only seen it really reported on stuff that there are fewer police officers today than there were 12 months ago. And this government is supposed to be adding 500 net more to the total, and there's fewer today than there were a year ago.
That can't be right because our government promised something.
Yeah.
They promised that there would be more police. They didn't do anything to make that happen, but they promised, which is all they have to do, right? Right.
Do you mean, are you suggesting we're holding them to the standards they set for themselves, Chewie? That's crazy. That's crazy. What are you talking about?
I'm suggesting that maybe someone should inform them that fucking words mean something. But also, just using words doesn't do anything at all, you actually have to do something. Like agree to their pay requests.
Yeah.
Maybe do that. That would be a positive thing. That would help.
I would like to do a thought experiment with Minister Mitchell and say to him, it's just a thought experiment. If we said that a starting salary of a police officer was $1 million, do you think we'd have a shortage of police officers? Obviously the answer is no. And then I would just suggest to him, why don't you start working down from $1 million to 900 and find that point, where that point is, because I guarantee you it's not like at 55. You know, I don't think that's where it was stopped. 100, 85, I don't know, but there's somewhere between what they're paying and $1 million that would probably solve the problem that you're trying to solve. Just a thought. The other thing, Chewie, is this is another story that's not really going around very much, but the Electoral Commission has reported after mass exodus of their IT staff that if there were to be an election held today, they do not think they have the skill set within their group of IT to actually do it. So that's shocking, and we'll play some TVNZ video.
That's
over
great.
That shortly.
We don't have to worry about that. Electoral integrity, like globally, is definitely something that we don't need to worry about. So that's great. That's very comforting. I am soothed.
But let's get into the show this evening with inviting back to the show someone we haven't seen for a wee while from the New Zealand Herald, Mr. Simon Wilson. Simon, kia ora, good evening to you, sir.
Kia ora, Pat.
Lovely to have you back. It's been a while. I think it might have been October last year.
It's very nice to be here. Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. You have written a very interesting op-ed. I don't want to sound dismissive, but do you think it's kind of a heading that kind of wrote itself after watching the performance of Mr. Luxon on some levels?
There was a point where that headline was in my head, and I thought, that's it. I can't even remember if it was in the shower, if I woke up thinking it or whatever, but yeah, I suddenly realized this is the topic I was going to write about, and that was the way to express it. And yeah.
So let's talk, shall we? Christopher Luxon's long, slow walk to oblivion. Talk to us about your rationale for what you're seeing in Mr. Luxon now and this slow hikoi that he is on.
Yeah, so I guess the short takeout of it is the government last year had everything going its way. They had won a big majority in the election. The Labour Party had responded by going, well, we've really got to do a year of penance and keep our heads down, and we're just going to, keep everything clean and nice and not pretend like we think people think we could be a government just yet. We've got to just sit it out for a bit. So it didn't really have an effective Labour opposition. The Greens had an annus horribilis. They had a terrible year with some of the things that happened to them were, you could argue, self-inflicted, but many of the things weren't. Professor Collins's death. I don't think people saw the extent to which MPs and ex-MPs would really go at them. But they survived all that. And at the end of the year and going into this year, Labour hasn't fallen in the polls. The Greens haven't fallen in the polls, and nor have Te Pāti Māori. They've all hung in there. National ought to be at least 10 points ahead. National ought to be romping along at the moment. They've had it all their way. They've had a Prime Minister dominating with his rhetoric, and yet it appears to have made absolutely no difference. They sunk then, and now they're starting to sink. And that's what was the backstory, if you like, to my thinking. Well, Luxon had the easiest year he could possibly have had, and yet he didn't manage to make any kind of difference at all. And now surely he's going to be in trouble.
So what I hear you saying is they basically had the perfect storm to be riding high, and they still can't do it. Do you think it's because of Luxon's lacking in ability, or is it a bigger picture to do with the public seeing like what's going on with the Treaty Principle Bill and not liking the whole picture?
There are a bunch of factors that are not Luxon's fault, and some of them are Trumpian and other factors to do with what's happening in the world. And there is also the really big issue that, my perception is that everybody's angry now. There's a whole lot of anger about all sorts of things. And I said in my column, you see it in driver behavior, you see it in domestic violence statistics, you see it in the way in which bus drivers and supermarket workers are being attacked. Right across society, people are quicker to anger, and of course you see it on social media. And because of that, it is harder to be a government than it used to be. People want to blame someone, and it's not even clear always what they want to blame someone for, but they want to blame someone, and so they're blaming the government. So it's not going to surprise me if we see a one-term government this time, but also it wouldn't surprise me at all to see a one-term government next time and the time after that as well, because people aren't going to stop being angry anytime soon, as far as I can see.
We were talking about in the last few weeks that Luxon seems to be losing it from both ends. There's people in the middle that, that would be mythical swing voter who might be going, we didn't vote for all this crap. And then there's people on the further right who are more like, we want more Trumpian type stuff, and they're going away as well. It's interesting you'd say the thing about a one-term government. We had Chewie on last year and we talked about that. And he said actually under first past the post, if you had a look at those results, there could have been several one-term governments, through the 70s and 80s that we didn't see because of first past the post.
Yeah.
It would be fascinating though to see what would have happened and what will happen this time, because that they haven't really. It's not like the votes have gone from national elsewhere and all of a sudden the right bloc has picked up. It has just stayed stagnant, which is certainly not what you want in that honeymoon period of the first 18 months of term one, is it?
I think there's a number of things that you can see from the polls. One of them is that New Zealand First and ACT, particularly ACT, have gone all in on the things that they think will grow their bases, and it isn't working. They're not in any significant way stronger than they were when at election time last year. So David Seymour and his Treaty Principles Bill, Shane Jones and his rampant drill baby drill and demonization of the Greens and so on, it's not really moving the dial for them. One of the extraordinary things about the response to my column this week is that from the left, from way out on the far left to way out on the far right, and pretty much everybody in between, people have gone, yeah, you're right, Luxon's not doing the business. And, all those people don't all agree with me or don't agree with each other about why he's not doing the business or how he's not, but they do agree that he's not.
I've seen a couple of pretty awful people retweeting your article going, I agree with you, Simon Wilson. I'm just like, how does that feel having some of those more despicable people in society going, is it the case that for them sometimes a broken clock is right twice, or they're just reading their own thing into it? They know they're not happy, maybe not for the reasons you're saying, but as long as you say you're not happy, there's some kind of agreement.
There's absolutely been that. I've had people saying, honestly, Simon, I don't agree with you at all or hardly ever, but I really do this time. And then as they go on, you go, oh, you don't agree with me at all. All you think is that Luxon should go, but you think that because you think he's in the pocket of demonic international forces that are going to destroy Western civilization. And that's not really what I think. So, there is that. But from a purely political point of view, if you've got a prime minister who is struggling to find a popular base anywhere across the spectrum, you'd have to think that's a worry for the National Party. Yeah, for sure.
Chewie, you got anything you want to jump in with, mate?
I've got the sneezes, so we'll see if we can get this going. As far as those people that reach out and sort of say, hey, look, I don't agree with you either, Simon, but you're right on this one thing. Is there something that unites that group of people that you could sort of put a finger on and go, it's that? Or is it just a grab bag of different pocket issues that they're not happy with them over?
One of the things that I like to think is true about politics, I don't know if it is, but I'd like to think it, is that whether or not you agree with a particular politician's politics, if they're effective and likable and you feel like you can trust them to be saying true things, you're more likely to recognize that they're legitimate as a political leader. And Luxon hasn't managed to do that. People don't, I think, believe him when he talks because he doesn't talk in human connecting ways. And it is very hard to see that he is doing things that are making the kind of difference that he's talking about. And, one of the things that's really, I would have thought, a crisis for the National Party right now in relation to Luxon is that it's easy for them to get obsessed about, oh my God, Seymour's hoovering up the right, or Shane Jones is hoovering up all the right as well. That shouldn't be their worry. What they should be worried about is that they've got a political leader who allowed the Treaty Principles Bill to put racism in the middle of our political conversation. People in the middle of New Zealand politics who might vote left or right don't want that. That's absolutely not where people are. And Luxon profoundly misread that. And he's reaping the rewards of that now. And I think you can see that in other ways. People don't want. There's a you could make an argument that people in the middle, centre, right maybe aren't convinced that it's a real priority to solve poverty, but they don't want poverty to get worse, at least. They don't really like the beneficiary bashing. They don't really like the idea that actually the minimum wage is falling behind inflation, rents are falling behind inflation. That isn't the kind of society that they're looking for. Climate change is another excellent example of it. They don't want a government that finds it too hard to acknowledge that it's a problem that needs to be addressed properly.
Seymour revealed, I think in a Q&A program, that the Treaty Principles Bill wasn't a bottom line for him. Now, says one of two things. It either says that Luxon can't negotiate, or that's Seymour saying it was a bottom line, but I want to undermine Luxon. So neither of those two things are particularly good. Yeah. And we've got Chewie's 6 favourite words are he's not very good at this. That's Chewie's 6 favourite words. And part of your article speaks to that. Just thinking about coalitions of the past. Luxon's inability to control his coalition partners is not normal. Dame Jacinda Ardern's first government included Greens and New Zealand First, who hated each other, but she did not allow that to undermine the coherence of the government as a whole. Sir John Key did the same with ACT and the Māori Party when he was in power. Ardern and Key knew how to manage Seymour and Peters. Luxon doesn't seem to have a clue.
Well, I think that's, I wrote that and I stand by that. It is astonishing to me that over the last year, as it has become clear that Seymour and Peters have both decided to kind of play whoopsie on Luxon's ass, he hasn't known how to deal with that. He just does not know, and he still doesn't know. I assume he. I was going to say, I assume he thinks that actually it doesn't matter to voters, and we'll all look past that. But I don't think that's true. He looks like an idiot now.
I was just wondering then whether he doesn't see them as an antagonistic force. Like he obviously sees Labour and the Greens as being the left. They're the opposition. They're the guys that have got to follow on. And these two at my sides, they're on my team. So I don't need to. But they're not. They're not on his team. No. They're on their own teams. So
they're on their own teams.
The door open.
I think you're right. They're on their own teams, and they're trying to steal his voters. They're not on his team. They are trying to steal his voters. And to me, one of the really big issues for Luxon ought to be right now that there's an organisation in New Zealand politics that has split the National Party, and it's the ACT Party that's done that, and they've done that with their Treaty Principles Bill. There are a whole lot of National Party members and supporters who are saying, why aren't you supporting the bill? And there's a whole lot of others saying, how dare you support the bill? We've got to move on from this. Whether or not Luxon thinks he should support it or shouldn't support it, he will know that that split is incredibly damaging to him. He doesn't need it. And that's my reading of why he didn't go to Waitangi. He didn't want to stand next to Seymour and be associated with it, because if he had, people would have gone, you, Seymour, you introduced the bill, you, Luxon, you enabled him to do that. And he doesn't want that conversation. He wants this whole issue to disappear so he can rebuild his party and make it united again. And he's played this one so badly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our audience is sick of hearing this, but remember, it's not just him that didn't go to Waitangi. It's Nicola Willis didn't go, Chris Bishop didn't go, Simeon Brown didn't go. Number 5, Erica Stanford, number 5, was the person that they sent there. So what does that say to the voting base about what the National Party thinks of relationship with Māori and our National Day? The other thing has just jumped out of my head, so I'll leave it at that for now about that. So yeah, it's a complete disrespect from the whole National Party about that.
There was an interesting dynamic from National at Waitangi. I was there. Erica Stanford, you're right. She was the ranking minister, but she didn't front anything. It was fronted by Tama Potaka and by Paul Goldsmith. And during the period when the Te Pāti Māori announced that they wanted to have a commissioner, a Tiriti or Waitangi commissioner, it was presented by a whole lot of people as if that was a veto over Parliament, that they would be able to overrule Parliament, which is not what Te Pāti Māori said. But the National Party response to it was fronted by Tama Potaka, who said, this is an interesting idea, we will look at it. And Paul Goldsmith, standing next to him as Minister of Justice, started to complain about the idea, and Potaka shut him down. Potaka said, no, it is an interesting idea, we will look at it. Which showed a level of statesmanship, but also showed a level of, okay, just right now, I'm the guy with the big pants on and I'm doing the talking, which is pretty interesting.
Well, it's interesting to watch Tama Potaka. Sometimes you have to wonder, and we do at least anyway, how the heck does he navigate this? Because he's very well respected amongst Māori to do with, his tikanga, his whakapapa, his language. Like he knows it all, and then he's working with people that say we got to make sure Māori is considered a second language and English. I don't know how he squares that circle.
The way I read it, I knew him before he went into politics. He's a conservative right-wing politician. He believes in the right-wing principles of small government, individual responsibility, particularly that one. And so that's why he's in National. But at the same time, he is a highly respected iwi business leader with real experience in that field, and that's a very rare thing in any party in Parliament. I think he's the only one at the moment. He has that. And he represents something that I think is pretty important in New Zealand society and in New Zealand politics. If you want to argue that Māori politics and Māori perspectives is not just a left-wing thing, but actually is everywhere, then you've got to allow that there are right-wing Māori leaders, and that's a good thing. He is one of them, and he stands for, we can be right-wing, we can stand for the things we think are important without being racist. And by rejecting racists, we can still be. And that's what he stands for. He is up against it. You've got to say he's up against it.
Not so much as government standing for that at the moment, the whole lot of them. No, just a couple of quick things. 2 more bits I want to read from your article as well, because one of them, once again, I think you might have been listening to Chewie a bit too much, Simon, because you're echoing him a couple of times in here. You talk about Luxon's leadership, and you basically say, you literally say, we're a country with a leader who has shown he can't manage effectively in these relatively calm times. Pray we don't find out what he's like in a real crisis, because the signs are not good. And the second thing, Chewie, and you can speak to this because this is what you say all the time, what Luxon's actions tell these voters is he does not understand this country we live in. And that's your point, Chewie, because you always talk about most of his adult life being outside of New Zealand. Chewie.
Yeah, his interactions with what New Zealand is about is extremely limited. His kids didn't go to school here. He hasn't had to use healthcare here. Like all of this sort of stuff has isolated him. So when he goes, I understand that Kiwis are doing it tough. No, my dude, you don't. You never
No, you
have. You're insulated from all of this, and I think that makes him unrelatable to most people. The way that he speaks just reinforces that, and it just comes across extremely disingenuous.
Agree with you. One of the things that you kind of hope that all politicians will do is have an ability to filter the noise from the substance. And, there's a lot of shouty people who go, outrageous, Māori getting too much, etc., etc., etc. A good politician can see through that and recognise that it is coming from an extreme. But if you're not grounded in the society, it's harder. If your kids didn't go to school here, you don't know the way in which kids in the New Zealand education system are comfortable living in a bicultural society. You don't know that. So it's harder for you. And Luxon shows all the traits of someone who just doesn't grasp those things.
It's even more than that, though. It's not that we're comfortable with it. It's actually we love it.
We like
the
it.
Multicultural aspect.
We really do.
It's actually part of who we are. I mean, living down here in Little Norway, aka Dunedin, as I took my road trip north to Waitangi, when I got to Rotorua, I was like,
yeah,
look at these brown faces. It feels like home again, because I grew up in West Auckland, and it's not actually that we're comfortable, is that most of us fucking love it. It is part of the New Zealand story. It's who we are.
That's it. Yep.
Okay, couple of things. What's next for National? You've put your column out there and included in this, if anyone wants to, it's in the ballot, wants to have are these guys going to last the full term? Is there going to be an early election? What's the election date? I mean, Winston Peters has never seen a full term in coalition. We know that. But what's next for National under this kind of weak leadership, this kind of walk into oblivion? How would you word it? Walking into...
long, slow walk to oblivion.
Long, slow walk to oblivion. What's next? 18 months till the election.
Yeah, Winston Peters did last a full term with the first Jacinda Ardern government.
Did he go outside of cabinet, though, for the last bit?
Well, he didn't bring the government down, let's put it that way.
I stand corrected.
Anyway, I don't... Who knows? I don't think we'll have an early election. I think... probably everyone in politics thinks that's too risky to do. But it's really clear that Peters and Seymour are both far more interested in building their own bases than they are in constructively running the country, something I said in my column. As I said, it isn't really working for them. There's a lot of noise, but they're not building their votes are not going up and up and up, as you might expect from the way they keep on at it. They really aren't. It's a great thing about this country. Their votes, the way they're going about it is not working for them. But I don't know that there's any reason to think they'll stop, because they appear to be completely wedded to it. That's going to make it harder and harder for Luxon. At some point, National are either going to decide, well, we're just stuck with them, or they're going to say, okay, let's have a new leader and do a reset and try and be fresh about this. If the polls show a decline, if the polls show a 5-point or more gap between the centre left and the centre right, National will not sit back and wear it. They will do something about it. And the thing they have to do is, what they'll do is replace their leader. They're not going to go into the election trailing badly in the polls. That's not a thing.
Someone said the other day that Judith Collins was at about 22% when she was rolled. Luxon's at 22%. We've also got people here saying, Peter says, I think Luxon will be rolled after the budget. I've already put my 2 cents out there. I reckon Erica Stanford's the next one, personally. So I think she's the next leader. I know there's probably others ahead of her in a lot of people's eyes, but I think she'll be the one that is most likely to continue on with a win. That's what I think, at least, anyway, whenever that happens.
I'm with you on that, Pat, actually. Erica Stanford has an unusual mix. She looks fresh and new. She's clearly very smart. She's doing the business and education. From a conservative point of view, she is ticking a whole lot of boxes in terms of her policy reforms. She's one of their ministers who's done her homework and is introducing evidence-based reforms that I know are controversial, but she's not plucking them out of thin air.
She can point to something.
Yeah,
She can
absolutely.
point to someone, and she's not like, the more you hear, I'm nearly going to say no disrespect intended, but what I'm about to say is very disrespectful, so we'll just forget that. When you look at Nicola Willis's performance, she seems more and more and more and more and more out of her depth, saying sillier and sillier and sillier things. So she's lost, I reckon, a lot of that possibility of being the next number one. And then you've got Simeon and you've got Chris Bishop. There's the tobacco lobbyist situation. There's Simeon and his pretty extreme. In fact, you were talking about those guys being like the ideologues in the National Party now, and so the ideologue is harder to be the likable chap you'd have a beer with, like Key managed to do somehow. So I'm just putting my oar in the stand and saying, I reckon it could be Erica next.
I think one of the Pat's gone. Pat's back. I think one of the things that ironically has happened with Nicola Willis is she always looked like she might be an alternative leader to Luxon. And the National Party conferences I've been to, she's been popular. She's done a very good job as the warm-up act for him. Been impressive. But she's kind of been dragged down with him now too. I think she's kind of part of the this leadership's not working thing. Without ever having really had the chance to show whether she could be something more.
Chewie, do you want to jump in with anything else before we wrap up, other than what you're about to say about me to mock me? But you can do that if you want. I know what you're going to
say. Just circling back to Pat's crush. Erica Stanford's also pulled off something that is kind of amazing to me, considering the term that National has had. She has managed to insulate herself from the worst blowback.
Yeah.
Like, she has. Whether I agree with her or I don't agree with her. Her education reforms seem dreadful. But I think you're acknowledging the fact that they make sense from an ideological point of view. She's kind of backed them, and she stayed in her lane. She hasn't let all of this other bullshit that's happening, even to the point of going, I will not be drawn on David Seymour's lunch. Now, that's our only criticism that we really strongly have of her.
Even though she's in charge of it.
Education minister.
Ultimately.
She's in charge of the whole bag. She's just like, that's little Seymour's pet project, not touching that. That's smart politics.
Yeah. Remarkable political skills. And remember, she's also Minister of Immigration, which is a portfolio that brings down a lot of politicians. She's managed to not let that bring her down either.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. Hey, Simon, it's lovely to see you again. We'll have to have you on more regularly. Thank you for joining us tonight. Anything you want to leave the punters with before we head off?
Look, this is going to be an extraordinary year because all of the parties of Parliament are really going to go hard now. They all think we've got a chance. Or if in the case of National, bloody hell, we've got it wrong. We've got to fix this. And so nobody's coasting. Everybody's going to be absolutely front-footing it, and if you're a political junkie, it's pretty exciting.
It does feel like next year's election could be somewhat won this year, depending where people end up at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, all right, Simon, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure, never a chore, and we'll have you on again super soon.
Thank you, mate.
Bye, Joey.
Thanks, Simon. Cheers, mate.
Thank you for the super chats and stuff, guys. They've been going. And Frosty, we did see you, but I feel like we kind of answered that anyway, what Simon's thought on both the left and right disliking Luxon so much. Are they for the same reason, or is it imported overseas Trumpian politics? I just think the left don't, we kind of covered that. The left don't like him because of all the neoliberalism bullshit stuff that's going on, and the far right don't like him because he's not Trumpian enough. I think that's what we kind of got to.
A better politician would be able to walk that line.
Yeah.
A more experienced operator would be able to walk that line. He's never had to before. And he's still in his on-the-job training sort of thing. He didn't even spend a lot of time in opposition. Yeah. So how is he supposed to have those skills?
It's so funny, because we keep getting told, lifelong politicians, we don't want them to run the country. And then you put in people who are like, quote, I'm putting air quotes around the word businessman, because he's not a businessman, he's a board member, businessman, and they don't know how to play the game. So they look foolish. So actually, you get what you vote for. An inexperienced person who's run businesses, from what I understand from hearing some of his previous employees to it, not particularly well, with some kind of amorphous, this is what we need for our country. And actually, if you don't know the rules of the game you're engaging with, you're going to lose,
Yeah. And
Super.
even by that ridiculous yardstick of, he'd be someone that I'd have a chat to over a barbecue and a beer. We saw him at a barbecue the other day. He was wearing a t-shirt over a suit jacket
Over a
and
suit.
eating some of the worst lamb chops I have ever seen.
I saw that
not
t-shirt was
relatable.
for sale. Did you see that?
Yeah, because he's trying to spin it into a positive. The fact that he's a goober that won't even take off his suit jacket to put on a promo t-shirt. Just ridiculous. Yeah. Man of the people.
Man of the people. I wear t-shirts as long as I've got my suit over the top of them.
I mean, come on. That looks like it's harder than just taking the jacket off. Like who in his team just stood by and like, oh shit, what's Chris doing? Oh fuck, I don't want to go over there. Look, and then he's doubled down to try and go, oh, look at me. I'm acknowledging what I did. Fucking hell.
It says the current bid is $2. That would be kind of hilarious. Unless that's just a screen grab. That's a screen grab.
That'd be very funny. God, that'd cut him more than anything.
Kiwi Bird says, we need to deport New Zealand first from Parliament. And Frosty says, Simon Wilson, one of the best Herald columnists. We would agree. All right. Shall we keep trucking, Chewie? Is there anything you want to add in?
Yeah, I do want to circle back to one thing about Tama Potaka.
Yeah.
I think that point that Simon was talking about of like making Māori issues neither a right nor left sort of thing. Now, this is sort of along the same lines of Matthew Hooton's infamous outburst. And I do kind of agree with that. But in his case, he's left carrying the can on stuff that is definitely not that. It has made Māori issues very much a left issue, and we don't want to do that. So that they've politically polarized it by going after it, rather than just going, hey, look, we're on the right. We have economic things in mind. And Māori issues can be they're an economic powerhouse. They're an important part of our tourism industry. You know, all of those sort of things that Luxon has been saying, but then you contrast that with why did you go on an 8-month blitzkrieg where everything on the chopping block was Māori? You know, I wonder how Tama sort of reconciles these two things of what he wants it to be and the honey bucket that he's been given to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, Shane Jones was on with Moana this week. I've started watching it. We might come back to it tomorrow night because that looks like it's set up for an interesting conversation. Howie says, hello, I'm Chris from sales. Yep.
Regional sales manager, Chris.
Can we please just can we not have this pattern that every time I mention Erica Stanford for the next 18 months, you tell me that I've got a thing for her? Can we stop that?
I don't know if I can commit to that course of action.
Because it's not true. It's not true. Just be careful.
Oh, there's clips.
Be careful. You don't want to bring the heat. Just be careful. I'm just giving you a fair warning. Be careful. Hey, let's look at this. This is I'm still kind of getting my head around what's happening with Te Pāti Māori and the marae and the accusations around inappropriate. I don't have all the info yet. We will definitely look at it, and I will definitely get more into it. But that was on TVNZ tonight, that story, and it seems that John Tamihere has talked about them photographing census documents, but then claims they've done nothing wrong with them. And I guess it's going to have to be figuring out what's happened. Have they photographed blank ones because they ran out, so they had other blank ones? Have they? Yeah. So it doesn't sound good. And I really hope for the work that Te Pāti Māori has done for the last 18 months, they don't get they get kind of rolled over by some bullshit that's been going on, you know, with the party or with management or with one MP. I mean, we've seen that with one MP rolling good works from the Greens, you know, for a period of time.
Yeah.
But for people who would probably say, well, have you talked about that yet? Yeah, we've got an amount of time to talk about. I am looking at it. We will talk about it because, you know, there's no point. We're not walking away from stuff that make awkward conversations.
As soon as you said photocopying census documents, my butthole clenched because I've done enough privacy fucking modules and sign-offs and that sort of thing to know that if you take someone's personal details, you can only use them under penalty of law for the purpose that information was given.
Yeah.
So straight away that doesn't sound great.
We'll keep looking at it, and we might come back to it tomorrow night. So because after tomorrow night, it's Monday for us. That'll be probably too long away. So maybe we'll try and get someone in the know to come and join us. Let's have a look at this though. This was another story about the Electoral Commission that came along after that. I've already kind of started the show by saying what this is about, so maybe I'll just play it. But it appears that the Electoral Commission have had a whole bunch of IT people move on, and it sounds like they're moving on because of the conditions they're now having to work under this government, to a point that now the Electoral Commission can't function if there were to be a election anytime soon, because they don't have enough IT people to actually be able to do it, which is a terrifying thing. That actually means our electoral system today is non-functioning. Today, like what's happening on this day is non-functioning. We're just lucky. It's a bit like what Simon was saying about, let's hope we don't have an actual crisis with Christopher Luxon because he's no good in the calm. So like, it's lucky we're not having an election today, because today it seems that the Electoral Commission wouldn't be able to do it.
An insider is warning the Commission has lost so many IT experts it wouldn't be able to run an election right now. Here's senior political reporter Benedict Collins.
Every 3 years, we cast our votes and decide who we want to run our country. But some are warning all is not well with the entity charged with running our elections.
It's a threat to democracy.
The Electoral Commission's IT staff are abandoning ship.
Dedicated IT experts at the Electoral Commission have been treated appallingly.
During a recent restructure, many of their IT team chose to leave rather than accept new roles they were offered.
So that's a really important point, yeah? So this is, we've all heard about backroom people and how unimportant backroom people are and how backroom people don't impact the front line. You probably couldn't get much more backroom than someone working on IT, literally in the back room. And now we're hearing an example of when backroom people go, how it can potentially impact the front line. Now, lucky we don't have a election today. And also interesting to know that these people, it seems, chose to leave rather than be fired, which means God knows what they were offered by this government, looking for cutback after cutback after cutback, for them to go, nope, I'm out of here. So, yeah, anything you want to add, Chewie, before I push play?
No, roll it.
They currently have 14 vacancies.
It's worry. If they are losing staff hand over fist, and more importantly, losing expertise, it's a real worry, because we know an election could be called at any time.
A senior member of staff.
In theory, he's right, but in practice, next year. In theory, he's right, though.
Staff at the Electoral Commission is now blowing the whistle on what's going on. They told One News that
management decisions have again put at risk the organisation responsible for delivering one of New Zealand's largest undertakings.
Answer me this as well, Chewie. We have got elections for councils this year.
Yes. So my understanding of this is local body elections, and this might be different in different parts of the country, are often contracted out. It's not necessarily a full effort from Elections New Zealand. They just do the national level stuff. So this is why with the most recent Auckland elections, if you remember, they ran out of ballot papers and stuff like that because the company that they contracted to do it did a shitty job. And maybe there's a warning in that.
Yeah.
Because the next thing is going to be, well, you know, if we don't have a politically neutral organisation to do this, maybe we're better just to pay for a third party to contract it. In which case, I would be extremely worried.
Because you never get bias from the private sector, do you, Chewie? You never get bias from that
no.
At all.
No, absolutely, certainly not. If you've got people bidding on basically to have the keys to who wins the election, like this should be a huge story, and maybe it's just because it's developing now. But when you look overseas, and a lot of the major democracies is going, we face more challenges keeping our free and fair elections because of outside interference from state and non-state actors, maybe we should put some more focus on the fact that the entire IT team just fucking left.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going on the story.
And they warn that so many IT experts have now left, the Commission may not be able to run an election at short notice.
Is the Electoral Commission a bit of a basket case?
No, I wouldn't describe it as that, but...
It sounds like their IT team, they're leaving in droves. How concerned are you about that?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously you expect the Commission to be ready at any stage. I mean, it's for the Chief Executive to make sure that they're managing themselves properly.
There's that palm off hospital pass again. Executives, they handle that. It's not us, it's them. Yes, we're making it difficult for them to run their department, but it's their job to run their department.
The Electoral Commission refused to make anyone available for an interview, but in a statement said they were absolutely confident they would be able to scale up and deliver an election if required.
Now, very important 2 words there. I'm sure you picked them up, Chewie. Scale up. Therefore, they're confirming the story. Because at the moment, if you need to scale up, that means you need more people to come and complete the job in front of you that you currently do not have. So whilst they have said they're not going to comment, if a department needs to scale up to complete a task, that means as of today, we don't have enough people to do it. So that's just basically been confirmed.
But some don't buy that.
Things are very bad at the Electoral Commission. We are losing dedicated IT professionals whose job it is to make sure that our elections are run with integrity.
Fresh concerns about an organisation under fire. Benedict Collins, One News.
There you go, Chewie. Have at it, sir.
The New Zealand elections, brought to you by the Taxpayers Union and powered by Chewie.
And the New Zealand Initiative.
Oh, that's dreadful. I mean, look, there was a lot of talk in previous years about things that they would, or the government wanted to change with the elections. They wanted to crack down on special votes because, of course, special votes traditionally go more left than anybody else does. There was grumblings about having the ability for people to vote on the day, ID requirements, all of this sort of stuff. There were a lot of comments about with even that same day voting, special votes, ID requirements as we've been running it, having a lot of different polling places with a lot of staff and that sort of thing, that our elections have generally been considered like world standard as far as accuracy and security and that sort of thing. So with our current government having previously made noises about changing all of that, being more discussion about electronically voting instead of paper ballots. That was an idea that was floated. The fact that those sort of things would be being bounced around, and then the IT department with decades of experiences decides to walk.
Yeah.
It's really concerning.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and look, just a little side note, we should absolutely go digital. We should absolutely be able to pick up this thing on election day. You've got a bank, that's secure enough. We've got IRD numbers, that's secure enough. We should be able to just go in and vote on the day, and we should make voting compulsory. In other words, the lazy shits don't have to get off the couches anymore. They can just do it in their pajamas with their spaghetti on their T-shirt and just go. I'm talking about myself, by the way, Chewie. That's what I do. Be able to do it.
It definitely goes, like, whenever we've talked about elections, I am firmly in the point of adding more people to democracy does not weaken it.
100%.
So I want to see as many barriers to people participating in democracy to be removed. And that might mean adding in more digital options, the ability to vote online, that sort of thing. And you're right. If a bank can confirm my identity through an app or something like that, if I can do all of my tax stuff through IRD, if I can buy road user charges and that sort of thing, if those systems are secure enough for that job, then they should be secure enough for the election. The difference is in transparency.
Yeah, the IRD thing is the most obvious. We already have, don't freak out, conspiracy theorists, government numbers attached to us that are secure. Obviously, not everyone's got IRD like I guess if you're over 18, it just doesn't seem that difficult to be able to go off that and create through IT a system to do it. But anyway, some super chats that are coming. We're going digital like Estonia. Remember? I don't actually. What happened in Estonia?
Oh, we like Estonia or Latvia. Yeah. Apparently, we have to be one of those countries because we can't have
or if we're teaching Singapore, Australia, Canada. Remember that was last night.
Yeah.
I looked up those. Actually, I looked up those things. Sorry, it's in the ballot. I looked up those things. The starting salary in US dollars. New Zealand, it's like 35. The other three countries that he mentioned, between kind of 47 and 55,000 starting salaries. So there you go. So it sounds like all your primary school first year teachers are going to get a massive pay increase because Mr. Luxon wants to use the same sort of system, the same kind of outcomes as they get in the countries where they pay them much more to be a beginning teacher. It's in the ballot. Thanks for the tube chat. A source said the Electoral Commission is also preparing for the current government wanting to implement voter ID to crack down on special votes. I mean, will that crack down on special votes though? Because if you just have your ID, you just do it in a different part. I'm up in Auckland for the weekend, I have my ID, I can still do it.
Yeah, so I mean that's one of the things that I love about our elections, right? When they started putting polling booths in like supermarkets and shopping malls and stuff like that, the fact that we have, like when they're talking about special votes, remember a lot of the times they're talking about the people that rock up on the day to vote or the people that have never registered to vote and still want to participate, or the fact that people that we have an entire, what is it, almost 2 weeks we can vote?
More than that, I think.
Like you can compare that to America, where polling places are few and far between, especially if you're in the wrong shade or the wrong part of the country. And it's voting day is on a weekday. You're going to take time off work to travel across the county to line up at the one polling place in your county. Like that's the opposite of what we want. We want more democracy. That's what everybody's about, right?
Advanced voting started on Monday, 2nd of October. Overseas voting started on Wednesday, the 27th of September. No. So it's 27th of September, 2nd of October here in New Zealand, and the election was the 14th. So yeah, so just under 2 weeks. So 12 days. Yeah, for early voting. Yeah. The thing about America, and I agree with you, it's a stupid system, but this is where, unfortunately, the capitalism gets in and people are being concerned about losing their jobs, is they must be given time off to go and vote on that Tuesday. They cannot be docked wages. It's a part of their constitutional right. But I suspect what happens...
That's if everybody sticks to the rules, right?
Yeah, 100%. The Danger Mouse, late fee, thank you, appreciate that. I need to say thank you, sir. Danger Mouse is genderless. I don't know, one way or t'other. Citizen Gold, Electoral Commission are constantly working on this. It's one of those hard problems. There's more to it than just a login. Yeah, I mean, I get that. But I know that I'm making it sound like someone could just do a bit of code and it'd be sorted. But we already have a back end of sorts that gives every New Zealander over 18 a government number and all our information, right? Pretty much every New Zealander. I mean, maybe they could do it that it could be both for a while. You could rock up if you didn't want to, I don't know, if you didn't have an income, you didn't have an ID number, whatever. It just seems so silly that in this day and age when we do everything digitally, that I actually don't mind going and voting myself. I do it down at University of Otago, surrounded by freaking 19-year-olds. But it just seems to be the way we should be moving towards it, as you're saying, Chewie, making it easier for people to vote, getting more people voting rather than fewer.
And that, I think, just to really underline something, is by adding options in, not removing some. So if we're going digital, we don't get rid of paper ballots, because that is still going to be a preferred option for a bunch of people, because they've always voted that way. Or they don't have a compatible device, or they're not familiar with technology, or all of that sort of thing. And when it comes to the ID, that is another aspect of it as well. I don't
imagine what you could do.
Voter ID stopping people from voting because their driver's license is a bit worn, or
imagine what you could do with digital voting.
Their government name doesn't match how they present. Stuff like that.
As soon as the polls closed at 6 p.m, immediately, if we're using digital voting, you could have a whole bunch of results immediately. You could just push a button and they'd be there for those regions. But you're right, actually, now that you say that. And I used to think about, how nobody has blooming cards anymore for loyalty cards. They're all digital. They're all in your phone. It's the warehouse app. I'm like, ridiculous. The 80-year-old who comes to the warehouse doesn't have the Apple access. She should still be able to use the card. So I'm with you. That's fair.
Yeah. That's why I think it's very easy for people to sort of get locked in that tube and go, oh, this is the way forward. It's like, no, you've still got to have the other option.
You said you thought that should be a big story. I actually think this one should be a big story as well. I wonder if it's going to be picked up on tomorrow. I've got no audio video for this. I've just got the story on stuff. Fewer police officers in New Zealand with only 9 months to meet the target of 500 more. 14 months ago, the government promised to deliver 500 extra police officers. There are fewer cops in the country with just 9 months remaining to meet the target. Police Association President Chris Cahill said the figures are, quote, pretty depressing, adding it would require a large uplift in the number of recruits in the next few months for the target to be achieved. Associate Police Minister Casey Costello said taking a monthly snapshot can be misleading. Probably what she meant was can be unhelpful to our narrative, but she said misleading. Adding police were doing, quote, a huge amount of work to drive recruitment. She remained, quote, confident this is interesting. Ready for this? There would be an increase in overall numbers soon. An increase. So now if they get one more, they're going to be, well, there's been an increase. The latest police news magazine includes a graph showing that on November 27, 2023, when the government signed the coalition agreement, there were 10,211 constabulary staff compared to 10,139 as of January 27, 2025. The numbers do not include vacancies. At the time the agreement was signed, there were 227 vacancies. And so I found that for you. This is the document. So there you go. So this is policeassociation.org.nz. This is their actual document. And this is the graph that they were referring to. November 2023, 10,211. And look, that got down to 10,066. So they lost 150. And now they're up to 10,139. Going for their target.
The longer it goes, the steeper it gets.
10,711. Costello told Stuff figures from early February showed that there were roughly 10,193 full-time equivalent constables and 311 recruits currently going through training. All right, so let's add 311. Well, that's nice. Look, 11 makes 50. So that's 10,450. Still a long way short of 10,711. 10,450. If they all pass and they all move forward, I don't know what the failure rate's going to be. So you might be surprised to learn, Chewie, that Mark Mitchell, I know he bet his job on something. Didn't he bet his job on crime going down, that he'd quit if it didn't? Did he put this out there for if we don't get 500 new police officers? But they need, as we stand right now, they were looking to have 500 new police officers. And as we stand, they need about 600.
I think even the language of the 500 new cops, wasn't it just 500 more cops?
Yeah.
Or was it specifically new?
No, that has been, I didn't highlight it, but I did read it. That has been cleared up. It talked about net 500. They've made that sort of clear that it is actually, it is actually in addition to what there was. So that has been said. Mind you, even though it's been said, doesn't mean that they're not going to change it at any one stage. So once again, this government's very quickly turned, I'm not even going to say turning, I'll use past tense, has turned into overpromise, underdeliver. And it's another one. It's another one.
Yeah, I mean, you could solve that two ways, hiring more cops or retaining the cops that you've got. Now, they're not retaining the ones that they've got because they keep on dicking them around on pay, and Australian states are able to swoop in and go, hey, fucking come over here, we've got the money. So they're not keeping the experience, and they're not attracting new cops at the numbers that they want. So the options there are pay to retain the ones you have or lower the standards of the people coming in. Not a great binary.
just to confirm for you, Police Minister Mark Mitchell, it's even on the graph, the police will deliver 500 net more police officers on the beat in 2 years. So, yeah, it's in addition to 10,211, so it's 10,711. And Mitchell has said net. So that is what, I mean, that may not be what it ends up being, but that's what they have said pretty clearly. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Mr. Arvid says 311 people go to Australia. Everyone must go.
Hey, we've mentioned this a couple of times tonight, why certain things aren't a bigger story than we think that they should be.
Yeah.
Do you think that ties in with the announcement from today of yet more new staff hitting the bricks?
Yeah, we talked to Simon about that off here. It wasn't secret, but it's like, I think he said 30 are going from NZME. I think he kind of said, not me yet.
Yeah. But it's that's part of the thing, right? That's what we're talking about. Like, regardless of what you think of mainstream media, it's still people hunting stories, and there's less and less people doing it. There's less and less people producing those news stories, writing those news stories, fact checking, all of that sort of stuff. That's all going down the tubes. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of people out of the New Zealand news media landscape over the last year.
I suspect this story in particular, right, the police officers having fewer officers, it came out at nearly 4:30 this afternoon. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was a focal point for the media tomorrow. Obviously, Sam Sherwood here has either had a tip or has seen for himself this graph, and that was the essence of the story. So I suspect that we're reporting it first-ish because someone only highlighted it at, close to 5 o'clock this afternoon or whatever.
Cool. So we can look forward to hopefully tomorrow, Mark Mitchell somehow trying to blame gangs for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything in the chat? Mr. Arvid says, if Simon lets go, we should hire him. We. I like the we part of that. That's great. I guess with patrons, that's what we do, isn't it? It is a we.
Yeah, okay. Late fees will go up to that accidental one we got last night of $20.
I think if we're going to start...
And we'll hold people to, like, there was one after that says 3 times the normal going rate for late fees. And I was like, $60. No.
I think that if we're going to start figuring out how to pay someone for a full-time job, just saying, we might try and figure that out first. Just saying.
Remember, we had a crazy idea to get someone press certified to be able to go into Parliament and stuff like that.
It's not a crazy idea. I'm doing it.
Cool.
It's not crazy.
Are there any limits? Because I think we should give that to an absolute stalwart of BHM. We should give that to Gary. Get him press credentials, because he's always in the house anyway.
Only if he wears his marijuana suit, though.
Mandatory uniform. We'll get it written into his contract.
I was also thinking, maybe I shouldn't say it.
I like that. I was also thinking.
Yeah.
And then
the thing is,
complete the thought.
These are good ideas, and if we do it, we'll end up having to we'll end up like, I don't want to spoil a surprise, like talking about Craig Rennie and they get wind of it and then they say it's not going to happen. Because I was thinking, we could maybe get Harry Tam to be a correspondent for us as well, going into Parliament at some stage. Exactly. See? Prime Minister won't talk to him. What if he was behind the camera asking the Prime Minister some questions?
I love it. What all 3 of them. Can you imagine that just as part of the BHM correspondent takeover of the press room, and just what an absolute motley crew that would be. Gary in his weed suit, Harry Tam, and
Craig. And his Nicky No Boats t-shirt.
Nicky No Boat shirt over a suit jacket. Amazing. All the best ideas.
I probably shouldn't have said it. I mean, I don't imagine it's going to happen, to be honest. Yeah,
you've got to manifest it. It's you got to manifest that into the universe.
Here's another story that's fascinating. It is getting some press, but not. It's interesting. Some of this, I wonder if there's just because it was the OCR drop today. That is pretty big news. I get it. That's the first story from each. Because there was a bit of contention around that as well. Some people saying it shouldn't have gone down, but some of these other stories feel like they should be bigger than they are. And when that happens, I typically go, let's see what happens tomorrow. So we might be ahead of the curve. But when David Seymour is seemingly the correct person in the room talking about issues of race or Māori issues, it means someone strayed pretty far. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mātua Winston Peters. Green MP Ricardo Menendez March says Prime Minister Christopher Luxon needs to step in after NZ First Leader Winston Peters made an allegedly xenophobic comment about him. ACT Leader David Seymour has come to the Green MP's defence, saying, "We've got to stop obsessing over when people arrive in New Zealand." But Luxon has this afternoon refused to comment, ignoring questions on the matter from the Herald. Now, this ties directly to that conversation we had with Simon, because this is the example of a leader. And when we read Simon's article, we were like, John Key didn't have these problems with these other minor parties. Jacinda Ardern didn't have these problems with these minor parties, but this guy Luxon is, and his credibility is being shot by the actions of others who aren't in national but are in government. And this is another example. What? Refused to comment. Refused to comment? Like the comment is, oh, I don't agree. It's stupid. People can call it Aotearoa. You know, we have a rule in the house that you can speak English, you can speak Māori, you can speak New Zealand Sign Language. There are 3 languages. So therefore Aotearoa is New Zealand. That's it. Conversation's over. But refuse to comment actually makes it bigger. And once again, just speaks to everything we talked about with Simon Wilson and his pathetic leadership credentials. Do you want to offer anything before we actually play the story, Chewie?
No, roll on.
The Green Party is again calling on the Prime Minister to rein in his deputy after Winston Peters referred to the nationality of Ricardo Menendez March in Parliament. He argued that Menendez March should not be allowed to refer to New Zealand as Aotearoa. And while Christopher Luxon wasn't...
Why? What? But just why? Yeah, why?
Interested in pulling him into line, another coalition partner was. Here's senior political correspondent Jenna Lynch.
New Zealand First singing it loudly and proudly. But uttering it in the House.
She thinks it's fair to deport people who have been born in Aotearoa.
Apparently a different story.
Point of order, the Right Winston Peters.
By the way, I think he was talking to Erica Stanford. So he was talking to Erica Stanford about that case of the young guy who's going to be deported to India because he was born after a certain date. So he's talking to Erica Stanford, right? So this is actually nothing to do with Mātua Peters at all. But he had to stick his oar in.
Here we go again.
My question is a serious one. Why is someone who applied to...
Sorry, Winston, it's not. I mean, it's not a serious one. I just want to make that clear.
The Right Winston Peters.
Here we go again.
My question is a serious one. Why is someone who applied to come to a country called New Zealand as an immigrant in 2006 allowed in this House to change the country's name without the mandate, the approval or referendum of the New Zealand people?
Winston Peters...
I mean... The mandate, the approval, a referendum of New Zealand people. It's the name of the country. You're allowed to use Māori in the House.
He should have been thrown out of the House for being just... I assume he just woke up at the wrong time and just, oh, shit, got to do something. But yeah, it's stupid. He hasn't changed the name of the country.
No.
Like, he hasn't banned people calling this place New Zealand.
No.
The relevance of him arriving in 2006 is irrelevant because he got voted in to represent his constituents. Like, so the question of when he arrived is, again, irrelevant.
Although,
like all of
does,
this is a joke.
It does feed into maybe some of Winston's base about these bloody migrants. Look at this guy, bloody came in here and now he's sucking off the teat of the bloody MP, and he won't even call it bloody New Zealand.
It is a little bit harder because he's not a woman. Usually that's the gimme, and they got rid of Golriz.
The trifecta,
who was also foreign and a refugee and a woman and a green. So get her. So now it's
lining up for another.
Clear that this crowd have moved on to the next target.
But it's not even moved on. Remember Shane Jones? Go back to Mexico. This is the same crew.
The round with Ricardo Menendez March, who was born in Mexico.
The person asking the question is an elected member of this House. If he is using a name that's not acceptable to others listening, then I can't do much about that.
Speaker Jerry Brownlee initially brushing it off before making a different ruling.
It's probably not an unreasonable thing to perhaps use, if you want to, the two names Aotearoa and New Zealand, but not just...
Oh, fuck off, Jerry. He's basically saying if you're going to use Aotearoa, you should use New Zealand as well. No. So therefore, if you say kia ora, you have to say, and hello, right? No, and thank you. No, of course you don't. Don't talk such horse shit.
For one, quite clearly the minister is sworn as a minister of a government in New Zealand.
Ministers can take the oath in either English or Te Reo Māori, like Shane Jones did, for instance. The coalition...
Oh, he just said Aotearoa and didn't say New Zealand. There wasn't a mandate for you to say that, I don't think. What did Winston say about that?
Not united in this particular culture war.
The Maori word Aotearoa is on our money and it's on our passport. So I would just make the argument that while I prefer to use New Zealand, I'm not here to stop other people saying Aotearoa.
Mass majority of New Zealand.
I hate agreeing with Seymour.
When he's the reasonable one, that just elevates how far away old man Peters is from reasonable.
I would just make the argument that while I prefer to use New Zealand, I'm not here to stop other people saying Aotearoa.
Mass majority of New Zealanders believe this country's name is New Zealand, and if the name's going to change, we're going to ask New Zealand people first, not have a few little radicals decide they're going to change it.
There was no issue raised when Cabinet Minister Tama Potaka referred to Aotearoa in the House yesterday.
I look forward to engaging with nearly 30% of the entire whenua of Aotearoa to generate more revenue.
Tama Potaka is a Māori, not a recent immigrant.
The third leg of the coalition labelled...
Oh, fuck off.
But remember, these are also these guys. These are also these guys. So he's saying, right, you know what he's saying there? He's saying native born, people who've been here for a long time, they have different privileges. This is coming from the same side of politics that are trying to make sure no one, no matter when you arrive, has special privileges. So they're trying to have it both ways there. He's actually saying the native people, indigenous people can say it. No one else has got the same rights there. That's what he's saying. Whilst out the other side of the mouth for that side of politics, they're saying no one should have different rights based on their ethnicity. So which is it? Which is it, Mr. Jones? You know,
it's right up to the line of like, no, he hasn't earned a reo. Hasn't been here long enough. Wow.
Yep. Generate more revenue.
Tama Potaka is a Māori, not a recent immigrant.
The third leg of the coalition labelled Peters' argument about Menendez March's arrival in New Zealand ridiculous.
But it's not a comment I would make. I believe in the principle that no matter whether you came here on a waka, a sailing ship or a 747, if you're here legally, you're a Kiwi and you should be treated equally.
It was utterly appropriate. He applied to a country in 2006 called New Zealand. And in this parliament has just changed the country's name without the mandate, the authority or referendum of the New Zealand people. It's totally appropriate.
It's just explicitly xenophobic. And again, what we have is language and behaviour that can translate to harm outside of these four walls. And the most disappointing thing about this all is that the Prime Minister is literally too scared to hold Winston Peters to account.
The Greens wrote to the Prime Minister not even a month ago when Winston Peters last brought up the national origins of their MPs and Shane Jones yelled, "Send the Mexicans home." They never heard back.
I mean, we can keep writing these letters, but what you're seeing is the Prime Minister is completely missing in action.
The PM wouldn't stop for questions on it today.
Are you going to pull Winston Peters into line?
Choosing silence over a war with Winston.
There you go. That'll do for that story, Chewie. It's just, I mean, just flip it. If it was the other way round, just flip it. It would just be seen as just straight out racism. You know, they would be losing their little minds if it was the other way around and it was the woke lefties saying something similar to them. They would be losing their minds with their little culture war. And Luxon, you are weak. You are going to be rolled. If you want that knighthood, it might actually be time to learn how to get a bit of a spine on some of these things, Mr. Luxon.
There's a couple of crimes here, which is the outright racism and xenophobia. Literally weeks after they did the same thing and got criticised. They don't give a fuck. about it. Winston is just in full drunk uncle mode. Granddad's into the fucking port again and is ranting about foreigners. The other crime, and I think that the more serious crime here is having me on this show agreeing with David fucking Seymour.
Yeah, but the problem is
caused me psychic damage.
Yeah, but dude, the problem is it's like, when you hear comedians and they say they tell an overtly ugly joke, that they're telling it for people to be uncomfortable, and one person laughs a little bit too loud and you're realizing they're kind of agreeing with the joke from up the front of stage, whereas everyone else is awkwardly uncomfortable. It feels a bit like that with Seymour, because whilst we agree with the principle of what he's saying in this, he's using it to actually further his own narrative around the Treaty Principles Bill that we're all the same. So it's like he may agree, but it's a bit like what Simon Wilson was saying earlier about people on the far right agreeing with him about Luxon. They might be agreeing, but it's actually for a very different reason, and we can be separated from that, I think.
Yeah, it's such a diversion. It's like, I don't know. Again, the coalition is not pulling in the same direction. They never have. We now have the two deputy leaders sniping at each other and scoring points off each other over something that, just as pointed out in that story, has been a non-issue in the House, has never been an issue up until now. Depending on who's doing it, it'll never be an issue again, but somehow it's an issue when this particular MP uses the words that others can use. It's so unhinged. There is no consistency or anything like that. And that's the story, is that Winston couldn't walk a straight line if he tried, both in his positions and, I guess, depending on the time of day, in real life.
I want to share something with you now that I saw across my TikTok feed today. I'm a little bit reticent to share this because, that TikTok I shared last night, that got us blocked from the entire world for breaching copyright.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yep.
I got messages of that going, oh, the video's gone.
I had to trim it out and then they accepted it. But we've been blocked before from Russia or this, and it was from the entire world for doing that.
Not our Russian audience. It's the only way that they find out that not all of Russia is inside Russia anymore.
If anyone knows KDP_NZ on Twitter, let them know that we're using their stuff, and please don't get us blocked for the whole world. Because this feels like this one here. This is a mimic of Seinfeld, but it's based in Invercargill, and you have to listen to the language. And one of the most important things, Chewie, is to see who's in the credits at the very end. Now, trigger warning, this is pretty horrifically racist, just so you know. If you don't want to hear it, then block your ears. But what we're doing is showing you that these are the people that Winston is speaking to. In all seriousness, these are the people that Winston Peters is speaking to.
I've had a guts full of Maori language being shoved down our throats. I was in an elevator in a government building the other day and it had something like whaka waka 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 whaka, big print, small print, lift. And that's the last straw for me. I've had a guts for it.
Now, even that little music from Seinfeld might get us kicked off. But did you like the bit at the end? Executive producer Nobby Clark, also Julian Batchelor. That was the credits for that episode of Invercargill, as it was said. So hopefully that won't get us booted.
Look, as someone in the South, you come across these attitudes from the older crowd, and it's embarrassing. Like the statements from Nobby Clark. Embarrassing. It is cringeworthy. It is does that really bother you that you saw a sign in a lift?
Really? Apparently it said that. Apparently.
Yeah, I'm sure that was that man's last straw. I think the last straw should have been the amount of knitwear that he was wearing. It was very strange for an inside event. Just this is the last frantic flailing of a certain segment of a certain demographic who somehow feel threatened by this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and it
gone
should
by
be
attrition.
Yes, it's offensive. Yes, it's boring. Yes, it's all of those things. But it is the tail end of it. Like the kids going through school now do not have a problem with this.
Yeah.
They're integrated into the culture. They're proud of the culture because it has come forward over the space of decades. That man has seen it coming forward, and he feels like it's threatened because he can go on talkback radio and say, you can't even call it a fucking hospital anymore. And the cost of space is too high. It's just the ramblings of an irrelevant person who feels irrelevant, who feels like he's being threatened by something that has nothing to do with him and realistically doesn't change his day to day. But he wants to be that person that's standing up for something. You're standing up for the past and you're standing up for ignorance and racism. Don't be proud of that. Sit down. Take the mic away.
Yep. Well said. Someone was saying we had another Michael Richards on our hands. That's what I think. Some of the comments in the Kramer with his fantastic comments from the Just for Laughs comedy gig set or whatever he did. Anyway, Kiwi says make sure you give Gary Childs a BHN suit. Mr. Arvid's David Seymour has bye David. We need Matewa Winston. Maybe.
That's a good
when
one.
David Seymour is the sane one, we are in serious trouble. Tiffany says, sick of these neo-libs usurping tikanga. Sealess did it at Waitangi. Now Shane Jones is gatekeeping. Shameless kaupapa. And one more here, more like knob-head Clark. AIR. Am I right? Gosh. So that's pretty much us. Anything else you want to...
But we've still got 9 minutes.
No, we can go early tonight, so I can sleep.
Hey,
lovely.
Oh no, I won't introduce new business. Pat wants to go back to his real world, which is his wife.
Oh, still sounds a bit strange. Cool. Yeah, no, that's. I was just thinking through. There's nothing else we've got to do. I don't think so. I think we've done everything. Oh no, there's actually one other thing that I'll show you. Maybe we'll.
You're doing the tangent. I'm
not really, because I had it prepped to talk about. I wonder what Mr. Luxon and Mr. Seymour think of these comments from Mr. Trump about Ukraine starting the war.
And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for very well. But today...
So he's talking about we weren't even invited. So he's talking about Ukraine, and then I'll play again. He says they shouldn't have started it.
I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. Ukraine. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
So the question I have for Mr. Seymour and Mr. Luxon about that is, do you agree with the sentiments of Mr. Trump? Do you think Ukraine should have been at the table for this conversation as one part in this conflict? Give them a beat to say yes, of course, and then say, so why aren't Māori at the table talking about the Treaty Principles Bill?
Ooh, that's very tricksy. I like it.
Well, it's true though, isn't it? Like, of course they're going to say, yes, Ukraine should be there because they're a part of this conflict. The other part, they need to be there. Māori, Treaty Principles.
Can I just say, you brought up the Trump thing, so it's your fault. These peace talks are the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, of course.
Like, usually if you're having peace talks, it's between the two belligerents. They didn't invite Ukraine to the table. Saudi Arabia, who are hosting, wanted them there. and they got vetoed. So it's Trump talking to the Russians about carving up Ukraine. He wants the Russians to give up almost no land, the Ukrainians to pull out of the one section of Russia that they control around Kursk. He wants Ukraine to give them $500 billion of mineral rights from Ukraine. He wants to forbid Ukraine from ever joining NATO. And he wants a demilitarized zone staffed by other countries. Those are the peace terms. Ukraine gets nothing. Their future gets fleeced, and Russia keeps everything they gain during their illegal invasion. This guy is the art of the deal for real.
Him and Luxon probably went to the same school for making deals, perhaps.
It's been enough for Keir Starmer to say, yeah, we're comfortable with sending troops to Ukraine.
Yeah. Yes, it's a shit show, that's for sure. Someone's just done a super chat. Do you want to bring up the super chat? I'm just doing something else at the same time.
Oh, yeah, someone's just clarified my point. It wasn't $500 billion worth of mineral rights. It was 50% of their future mineral rights could be in the trillions.
You may have already discussed this, but did you see that Tiananmen Square Cybertruck cartoon? Perfection.
I have seen it. Yeah.
Do you know the big problem with this cartoon? You've got 3 Cybertrucks that are obviously operating enough to get in a queue. If you're like me and you have Cybertruck news coming over your YouTube feed, there's so many stories of the first trip we took our Cybertruck on was back to the retailer to get it fixed. It got rained on and now it's rusting. We took the Cybertruck to put some, they call it lumber, some timber in it in the back, and it broke. It's almost like this one can't do truck stuff very well. On and on and on.
When it's snowing, my favorite is when it's snowing, which happens in big chunks of America.
The lights?
Snow accumulates where the headlights are.
Yeah.
So you've got to stop every now and then and brush the snow out. It's genius. For those of you in Auckland, you might have noticed that there's actually a Cybertruck driving around at the moment. It was imported to be in their showroom and they're giving people rides. I spoke to someone that has gone for a ride in it and they're demonstrating the full self-driving mode. Which
in New Zealand?
I don't believe that it's supposed to be shown in New Zealand. He was very, very uncomfortable with it. But the other things that he mentioned about that Cybertruck that I hadn't thought of. So we will never see it here in New Zealand.
No, ever.
For a start. Because
nor in Europe. It's not even going to go. This big brain businessman who's supposed to be the smartest man in the world has designed something that doesn't work as a truck, that's about 50% more expensive than he said it was going to be, that does about half the range he said it was going to be, and is never going to be able to be sold anywhere outside of America. Hello, bankruptcy. My name is Tesla.
So here's the other things. If it was importable into New Zealand, it's too heavy.
Yeah.
It's not a light passenger vehicle. You can't get a normal just warrant of fitness. You have to get a heavy vehicle. I think they call it a certificate of fitness, which has to be done every 6 months. Because it's a commercial vehicle. It's so ridiculous. I don't know why they brought it in here, but I mean, like, not impressed.
Yeah, but it will be a draw in someone's show. Okay, sure, fine. Would I look at it if it drove past the road and parked? I probably would have a look at it. But it's just, it's just, for people who don't know the Tesla story, this is really the first vehicle that Elon Musk has been involved with the developing, because he bought Tesla and the Model Y, the Model 3, those things pretty much had already been all designed. As soon as he gets his hands on the first design he wanted, it's the Tesla truck, which is the lemon of motoring world in the 21st century. It's the Edsel of the 21st century. And if you don't know what that is, go look it up. The worst ever released car with the most amount of hype and worst result. So that's him, right? Everyone talks about this big brain genius who's started all these businesses. No, he bought Tesla, he bought SpaceX, and he was involved with Peter Thiel in doing basically some programming to develop PayPal. This is not the genius you incels think that he is. When he gets his hands on wanting to build something, it looks like something that a 9-year-old would draw, and it doesn't do half the things it needs to do to be a truck, and it does other things it shouldn't be doing. It's just, please. No. And I'm not a hater. I don't mind Teslas. You know, the actual cars, they're okay. But no. Sorry. I'm done. And we're done.
As an EV fan, yeah, like the Tesla Model 3 and that sort of thing, they're decent cars. They're tainted now, but yeah, they were good cars. They were far ahead of anything else for years.
I think I said this last week.
They haven't done any innovation.
I think I said this last week with you in here, Chewie. I saw a Tesla driving down the road the other day with a bumper sticker that said, "I bought my Tesla before I knew Elon was an arsehole." Which I think it's quite a good bumper sticker for your Tesla. Ian says, "I love BHN." Oh, BHN loves you, Ian. Kooky Nick says, "Late Soz Deer Stalkers was on tonight." Excel Deer says, "Der Wank Panzer." And Vank Panzer. And Mr. Arvis, China is killing the EV gain. No, they're not killing the EV gain. They're growing the EV gain. Some of the stuff coming out of China is amazing.
What I think he means is they're killing it, as the kids say.
Oh, sorry.
Killing it, man. Like,
okay,
sick.
All right.
I work with children.
There is a thing called a sarcostrophe, I think it's called. Little upward arrows that you can use and think to highlight when something is sarcastic. A sarcostrophe, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, really?
It's a real thing. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Shut up. You've been mean to me tonight. I think this is our last show. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing for the last 3 years, guys. But I think we're done.
Yeah, this is our last show for this Wednesday night.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting bees from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, neither this way or that, and we'll be analyzed by what Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. Big hairy news.
All right, we'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 for another live edition of BHN, Big Hairy News. My brain just went away for a second. I just went, I should call it BHN because that's like short for Big Hairy News. That just went through my head like we've never called it that before. How I think sleep is needed from this side of things.
Oh, no noise.
All right.
Well,
thanks, team.
Like, my wife calls it big hairy nudges.
I know.
Won't stop. Won't stop, can't stop.
Love and kisses on all your pink bits. We'll see you tomorrow night from 9.
Ah!
Hooroo.
Cheers, man.
I shut down the wrong window, by the way. I turned the screen off.
We're still here. This
I know.
is the Marvel post credits scene.
There you go.
Of
Got it back. Smooth. No one saw that.